Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full Press Fantasy Live. My name is Kyle Senra, hosting again, as always, every Sunday morning here on the Full Press Coverage YouTube page. I'll be streaming everywhere on YouTube, on Twitch as well, Full Press Facebook. So, anyone who wants to feel free, comment, chime in with your any interactions you have, let me know for sure. I typically start sit questions are the norm on Sunday mornings. So of course, if anyone has any start or sit questions for me, feel free to share them in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer them. I refer to my rankings and yeah, of course, once we get to closer to noon, we'll have all the teams active and active reports for the 1 p.m. Eastern time games. And at that point, what we'll do is I'll go through them. There's a few questionable players. There's a few questionable players later as well. Uh, Got a list. I just remember my list of just players questionable in the later games and what I'm doing with those players on my specific teams, but then also give some ideas of what to do to go chase some players that play at later times that can be used as replacements. So we'll cover all that. So again, here on the Full Press Coverage Live Network on Sunday mornings, what I typically do first to start off is actually, I don't do this on Sundays. I do this Friday, Saturday, but I create a spreadsheet with all of my difficult start sit decisions, and then I kind of just lay out some stats all in one spot just to for myself to visually view it. But I also think it acts as a good tool for anyone here watching. So I think most more than the players I'm choosing, the process behind my choices is what I would like people to, I guess, is the thing people could probably take away best to apply to their own situations. So I will share my screen one moment here. Sorry about that. Sharing now. All right, so we look at a few things here. I guess real quick in this one league I did, I'm in. I've had to make one decision already in terms of benching Tyler Algier. Kind of showed the reasons why his projection isn't great. The defensive matchup against the Jaguars wasn't great. Targets less likely because one of the things with this league, start three of these players, but one of them is also a running back spot. So I had to start either Algier or Roshan. So the targets don't necessarily matter that much, but the defensive matchup was a big factor. A lot of that is last week. Broncos gave up 70 points and a lot of yards on the ground. I think they gave up, I want to say it was four different rushing touchdowns. I know Algier A-Chain himself caught four, or had four. I think two of them were through the air, but I think he had two on the ground. I believe Mostert had a pair as well. So, did Chris Brooks have something? They had at least four or five rushing touchdowns. So yeah, of course that will skew the stats, and they are the Broncos defense is the defense that allows the most points to running backs. But figure with Roshan, might as well take the chance there that continues to be the case. So that was one decision there, and then the other decision really comes down to Gabe Davis, Nico Collins, Josh Palmer, Marquise Brown. Who do I prefer between those two or those four? I have two of those four. Ultimately, I've gone with Gabe Davis and Nico Collins. Palmer is still a strong consideration, just with his role evolving with the Chargers. The high scoring game, especially for the Bills Dolphins, to me, these are the types of game scripts you want Gabe Davis. The reason I have him on the team, I've got Diggs on this team as well. And my thinking is I will play Davis in the shootout like matchups where high scoring games, the touchdown expectation will be up there. I certainly think that's the case here. So Gabe Davis with that kind of more automatic start, even though my rankings may not reflect it as much. I believe I have Collins ahead of Davis in my rankings, maybe even Palmer and Brown like super close, but just my specific league, knowing how I chose to roster Davis and when I wanted to use him, these are the games I look for. And there's nothing that says is super negative against him. His average hasn't been great, but that's the way it is, boom bust. So when he hits the booms, it'll be higher than, or at least as high as some of these other guys. Marquise Brown really scares me, and the 49ers defense really scares me as an opponent. So I kind of went away from them. And then between Nico Collins, Josh Palmer, some close factors on both. Palmer has the game script kind of, that's another high over under 49.5, not the Bills Dolphins, but the implied total as well, pretty high, not the Bills. So in a world where I don't play Gabe Davis, Josh Palmer's probably in there as that high upside matchup guy. I guess I prefer Davis in that situation. Um, yeah, Collins, I think just the volume. And I think that's something Davis doesn't necessarily have. You see with the targets. And Palmer, what I did here, he has 13 targets through 3 games. But basically, last week when Mike Williams got hurt, if he had 7 targets, so if you took that pace through 3 games, it'd be at 21. Just to give a reference point of what we can expect from Palmer relative to these other guys. But that pace isn't above Collins or above Marquise Brown. And ultimately, I think that was a factor why I went into. If he gets 7 targets or potentially even more than that this week, it'll still be right around what Collins is already getting. So we don't have to necessarily guess as much. So yeah, that's why I went with that. But yeah, the point of Marquise Brown and this 49ers defense comes into another league where I haven't still fully decided. And I guess part of the news of inactives, and this is kind of in advance of this game, but looks like Jimmy Garoppolo has been ruled out with a concussion. He wasn't able to clear the protocol. And supposedly Aiden O'Connell is starting at QB. So I decided to throw him in here as my QB2 on this team. I've got Justin Fields as QB1. So luckily this team isn't being carried by quarterbacks. McCaffrey, and once he's back healthy, Eckler, Diggs. Those are the guys that carry the team. Be nice if the quarterback could keep up too, though. But yeah, so looking at this, though, how much consideration should I have given to Aiden O'Connell? And I plugged him in, and I thought it was an interesting decision because some people might be in Superflex leagues dealing with that decision and like where to rank him and stuff like that. So ultimately, I went and I looked, and so going through each of these factors, implied totals for each team, and part of the reason the hesitation on Dobbs and the Cardinals offense in general at 15, that's the lowest implied total of any team this week. I also take these implied totals, I think Tuesday. And part of it is I know that the lines adjust, and maybe something like the Browns line, the 20.75 will adjust as well. Not the Browns line. The Browns line will probably adjust too, but the Raiders line with the quarterback. But I wanted to get a true sense of what the odds makers think. I know a lot of their adjustments that happen based on what other people like, what they put their money on. And so they'll adjust the lines based on how people bet. But I still wanted to get like the odds makers projections or their expectations, true expectations as early at the start of the week as possible. And so the Raiders end up with the best. Now, again, does that go down? I actually will check right now. Has that gone below the Titans? Because that might be one where I would change, maybe adjust because they're not adjusted because the people are betting necessarily. Although I think that's part of it too, is they're adjusted because of the quarterback situation. Still currently at 20.75. Maybe they honestly haven't had time to adjust, or maybe the line's already been they've hedged the bet on the line in terms of we're going to put it lower than expected, knowing that there's a chance Garoppolo comes out. So we're leaving that line as it's not totally, because the Chargers are pretty heavily favored already. But maybe that was going to be the case no matter what. But still, right now, it looks like the Raiders have the highest expected total. Maybe what really factors in the defense, right? Like that might come a little bit later. The over/under for the game, certainly the Chargers are upping that, but again, as a underdog, you almost want that game script for the quarterbacks. It forces them to throw more attempts. Now, I did have to somewhere in this process, I had to incorporate the fact that this will be O'Connell's first start, and so I and so like for the average of what he scored so far, it's 0 because he hasn't scored anything. And then his projection is also like super low. His projection on the site hadn't been updated to match the fact that he'd be starting. So I didn't put it anyway. But essentially, you can give him 2 negatives on those 2 and have that represent the fact that this will be his first career start. Dobbs has shown to score 16.2 this year. Tannehill's been pretty awful, though, at 9.75. His projection is high this week. Maybe that's part of the Bengals defense, higher than Dobbs. So I'm not holding that against Dobbs necessarily as much as I will against O'Connell. But even with that in mind, the game total, his own team's total, and then the Chargers defense allows 31, represents the second most fantasy points to the position. So in this case, to quarterbacks. So a lot of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. The Bengals at 21, that would be the 12th most fantasy points allowed. So, above average amount of points. So it's an above average matchup for quarterbacks, but still not as great as facing the Chargers. And then 3 almost seems too high, but the 49ers have allowed the third fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. And then that's just my ultimate fear with this matchup, even more so than Marquise Brown in the other league, where they are really middle of the pack when it comes to allowing fantasy points to wide receivers. But certainly at quarterback, it's bad. So really wanted to bench Josh Dobbs. Honestly, I'm pretty sure I'm leaning Aiden O'Connell right now. I have left it blank because I haven't fully made the decision, but I feel like just talking through this, Tannehill's been so bad lately that I don't really feel that bad benching him. So I think I kind of want to. I'm kind of curious on the rookie. Shout out to Eric Vanek at Eric Vanek NFL. He's a huge Aiden O'Connell fan. I think he would have ranked him as the QB4 probably before the draft too, but certainly post draft. Way ahead of Levis, and he's going to start before Levis. It looks like outside of the big three that all went in the top four, O'Connell was the next, and I picked him up on waivers after the rookie draft in this dynasty league. Of course, quarterback is only part of the decision. The last two flex spots in the lineup as well. I had 4 players that I strongly considered. One would have been the stack with Tannehill and DeAndre Hopkins. The others is again that Chargers Raiders game. Donald Parham, backup tight end there, and then DJ Chark and KJ Osborne, both from the Minnesota Carolina game. So funny how the game stacks suddenly all apply all of a sudden. The first few things that I noticed was, Donald Parham excels in 2 situations: the game total and the implied team total. The Chargers are expected to score a ton of points. I believe it's like the 4th, maybe 5th highest implied total on the week. And then this 49.5, I believe, is the 2nd highest over under for a game total. So, those are the only 2 areas where Parham stands out. Those are the 2 areas where Hopkins is the lowest, 19.75 for the Titans, and then a 41 over under between them and the Bengals. So that was, looking at initially, I'd be, okay, Hopkins may be the guy I'm going against and starting Donald Parham. Then the negatives start happening for Parham, what his average is, what his projection is. And this is including the fact that now Mike Williams will be out. Will he see more targets? I'm not sure. But those are kind of 2 negatives that sort of balance out the part about Parham's profile. KJ Osborne actually has the highest average, and part of that has been the touchdowns. Do those continue? I mean, they certainly could. We'll get to a ranking though that maybe says, does the ground game really dominate with the Vikings in terms of touchdowns? DJ Chark, his projection is high this week, and I think a lot of that is the targets he got. So he has the highest projection, while Parham has the lowest. Highest average goes to Osborne, while Parham has the lowest. Then we get to the defensive rankings. This is where it really works against Osborne. The Panthers have allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Part of that is that they're allowing so many points to running backs. Teams haven't really needed to throw at high volumes against them. Which, the way the Vikings have played this year, maybe they want this game where they can just run down the throat, go back to the Mike Zimmer defense. Now, part of it is they might also want to gain confidence and not play a close game. They'll come out guns blazing, passing a lot, and then they'll run late to sort of maintain that lead. Maybe that helps Osborne get in the end zone, but it's something that definitely counts against him. DJ Chark, however, has a great matchup. The 3rd most fantasy points allowed by the Vikings. Again, it's both defenses really bad. Now, DJ Chark gets to exploit the Vikings defense a lot better than Osborne would the weakness of the Panthers defense, which is again on the run. So in that game alone, does make me seem Chark is the better option. The targets being the next thing, and this is where it really works against Parham. 7 targets. He has 3 touchdowns on 7 targets, which is a crazy pace. And in order to play him, you really do have to hope for that touchdown. So something else that works against him. Chark. 12 targets in 2 games, and frankly, his first game back, he only saw 1 target. He got 11 targets last week. But even if you just take a 2-game pace and 18 targets, that's a higher pace than Osborne and Hopkins. If you take last week's 11 and over a 3-game pace, he's got the most targets out of this group. So all to say, when I got through this decision, Chark stood out as the guy I needed to start. So I put him in. So he's in the lineup right now. And then Hopkins. What really solidified it, was him leading in targets. I considered going Osborne, but ultimately the news that Treylon Burks is out, that was released yesterday, so that really gave me confidence in playing DeAndre Hopkins. So that was one of the more difficult decisions for myself. The one last thing I want to touch on quick, Tutu Atwell, Tank Dell, and I wonder if a lot of people have this decision, because I certainly did in a couple leagues where I just picked up both, so maybe there are people with this exact scenario. I kind of prefer Tutu Atwell regardless. There's one spot here where I'll end up playing both, But in both instances, I looked at Tutu as the better start. In this particular league down here, this might have been the one where I might have gone Dell just because the average points was a little more of a disparity. They're essentially scored the same in this league setting. I think the big difference here, points per first down. So Atwell maybe gaining more first downs per reception, whereas Dell shorter depth of target. Maybe not every catch goes for first down. So certainly in this first down league, Atwell was kind of the first guy plugged in out of these three. And ultimately, the news that Deshaun Watson's out has made me kind of go away from Mari Cooper and end up playing Tank Dell anyway. But I just wanted to kind of talk on Tank Dell versus Atwell was something initially in the week I was looking at Atwell as the guy, but I've kind of gone into I preferred Tutu Atwell, and I've raised him. I think initially my rankings had Dell below Atwell. I've changed my rankings to reflect that. Another guy was Logan Thomas, Dalton Schultz in this league. Okay, maybe a tough decision. Then I plugged all the info in, and other than the Texans implied total, which is only of 1 point ahead of the Commanders, everything else goes in favor of Thomas. I think in my rankings I had Schultz ahead of Thomas. So again, change my rankings to reflect that. You can find my rankings on fullpresscoverage.com, by the way, for anyone who wants to consult the full view of rankings. But those were some of my start sit decisions this week. All right, so we've got Joel Shaparo. Always tuning in. Appreciate Joel for all his support. Every week he gives me a tough question. Who should I start? CJ Stroud, Derek Carr. I'll check my rankings right now, but I'm pretty confident Stroud is higher. Now, I've kind of been hesitant on Carr's ranking this week because of the injury. It is a shoulder injury, and I know the report was he's playing today, and also he was supposedly pain-free on Friday at practice. Pain-free is nice, but I don't know how effective he's going to be. I've got CJ Stroud at QB 19, Derek Carr at QB 27. So I think just play it safe with the health and go Stroud. And frankly, even from that high floor perspective, go Stroud. I think he has a higher ceiling than Carr anyway. Now Carr's no, he doesn't have the great match. I was thinking Raiders again. It's going to take time to get used to that. Carr, the matchup against the Buccaneers, could see that game potentially being division game close scoring. So I think Stroud has the higher floor and the higher ceiling, which is why he's 8 spots higher in my QB ranking. So Joel, I'm pretty confident going with Stroud this week. He's shown a lot. Really set a higher upside last week against the Jags defense. That's a pretty good defensive unit too. So I do wonder if Stroud, it took him a couple games of slow starts, but he's figured it out in week 3 already. And great accuracy. Comparable to Carr, that's been one of his trademarks too, is just good accuracy with passing. But yeah, playing it safe. And again, I think it's playing it safe, Joel, but I also think I frankly just think Stroud has more upside than Carr. So I think you're also playing the upside play too. And that's why I think it's a pretty easy decision when a player has, and that's one thing I'll do with when I expand my my spreadsheet next week. I'll start including my goal line guide info. And that'll start coming out. I usually wait 4 weeks of the season. I remember one year I did 3 weeks, and then I did week 4, and it really still was pretty wonky. Week 5, things started to nail down a bit better. As the season goes on, I find the goal line guide and the goal line grades just become even more accurate because we're just putting more information in. 16 weeks of NFL game data is a lot better than 4. So by the time we get to week 17, it's certainly helpful. I know last year I ended up ranking number 1 in Fantasy Pros in week 17, that championship week when it was the most important. Out of 200 and however many people there are, over 200 rankers in the expert consensus ranking, I ended up finishing number 1 overall on the week for week 17. I think part of that was my goal line guide was at its finest at that point. So it'll be refined. I still think it's appropriate to use starting week 5. So starting next week on fullpresscoverage.com. In addition to my rankings, you'll also find the goal line guide article, and I'll share every single goal line grade for every team, both running and passing, indicating how likely a touchdown is coming, whether it's on the ground or through the air. And then also I'll write a few paragraphs about certain teams, why the grade is that high, kind of sharing the methodology of what I'm doing and how I'm getting these grades. And usually the highest examples, like the teams that really stand out with a super high grade, why is that the case? And the teams with the super low grade, why is that the case? Usually just go through there. Maybe show a team that has a super large disparity between one or the other. And then, yeah, that's we'll move on from there for sure. So I think there's a couple extra things this year I'm going to do in the goal line guide that I didn't do last year. And so it'll be a little bit different. Hopefully that helps it be a little better. So anyway, that'll start again, being available this week or this upcoming week on full press coverage. Honestly, I usually try to release that by Wednesday, like Wednesday night. If I release the rankings either Monday or Tuesday, usually try to get that goal line guide article done by Wednesday, so people have it like a full 24 hours in case things apply to the Thursday night game. Some weeks I might get it out later and not write about the Thursday games too. So by the latest, it should be out by on a Friday on any given week. But yeah, look for that every week on fullpresscoverage.com. Well, again, I'll try and get it for Wednesdays as often as I possibly can. So yeah, we're approaching noon. I'm going to quickly check the active and inactive reports. I want to see if we I got some of these questionable players. Again, I've already mentioned a few things. Deshaun Watson being ruled out. Mentioned who else? There's someone else that being ruled out. I forget. Oh yeah, the quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. So yeah, but basically the two quarterbacks being ruled out early, and those starts coming in from Aiden O'Connell, and I suppose Dorian Thompson Robinson would be starting for the Browns. Yeah, Dorian Thompson Robinson will start. Okay. Yeah, so let me just pull up the active and active list, and then we'll get to that. Okay. So a couple of Ravens players that were announced yesterday in terms of wide receiver, Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. Honestly, against this Browns defense, I think it'll be tough. I expect most targets will go to Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, and frankly, those guys are probably started in most leagues anyway. But now you're for sure going to play them. Still, without the left tackle Ronnie Stanley, who'll miss another game. So maybe the offensive upside isn't so great this week for the Ravens, but still their two best pass catching weapons. Justice Hill is active, so I know they activated Melvin Gordon off the practice squad, so it sounds like there'll be three running backs active. Uh, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Melvin Gordon. I think if I'm going to play any of them, it's probably Gus Edwards. I don't really want to in a three-way committee against a really tough defense. I don't want to play Gus Edwards if I don't have to, but it looks like he would be the one to play. I think if you are going to choose any of them, if you have the ability to choose any of them. For the Bills, no offensive players, but I guess a big news on defense. Maybe this helps the Dolphins certainly. Jordan Poyer's out, and I guess this will be a big story considering how the season ended for him last year. But Damar Hamlin will be active then. He's been on the inactive list all 3 weeks so far, and I guess with Poyer's absence, they had to activate another defensive back. Hamlin gets the nod, so Damar Hamlin will play today. It's a great story. Hope things go well for him. Certainly, it's got to feel like an immense amount of like weight lifted for him to get back on the field for him. So I'm sure once he gets active in an NFL game, plays a snap, I'm sure that'll be tremendous weight lifted off of him. And certainly, I think everyone in the football world is super happy to see him active. But players who are inactive for the Carolina Panthers, Raheem Blackshear, there was, I guess, maybe he could have maybe been active today considering Sanders was questionable. Was there a chance they play three running backs? They don't. They've made Blackshear inactive again, so Miles Sanders covered a 1-2. Because Sanders is dealing with an injury, I think I might be playing Hubbard in, like, one spot, not necessarily a strong team with a ton of running backs to go with, it's more like a desperation play, but you could do that, you probably don't want to, though. Jonathan Mingo, though, that's the big news for the Panthers, he's inactive. Going back to my earlier decision on DJ Chark, probably helps that decision as more targets drawn towards Chark. But yeah, Jonathan Mingo inactive, so just rankings accordingly for that. I will, and yeah, do not have Jonathan Mingo in the lineups. Looking at the Bears, so Chase Claypool, Dante Foreman, and Nathan Peterman are inactive. I thought they cut Nathan Peterman. I guess they re-signed him. QB3, right? Like that'll be on and off the team at times. So looks like Tyson Bagnet really is the backup quarterback, but Chase Claypool being inactive, I think what the news I saw was Equinemius St. Brown would take his spot in the lineup. So Mooney's goose egg the last couple weeks. You got to think he's going to be more involved. We'll see. Bears Broncos. What a matchup that'll be. For the Bengals, tight end Irv Smith is inactive. I don't really know. I guess, Drew Sample would draw in as the next as the backup guy. I don't really think he's worth playing. Most targets are going to the main 3 wide receivers, and if anyone else, it's probably Joe Mixon. So, don't play Irv Smith, obviously, but, I wouldn't elevate, the Bengals. Whoever the starting tight end is just for the sake of doing it. I think Devin Asiasi might also be on the team. Um, I they throw so little to the tight end anyway that when the backup's in, they're not really gonna have enough upside, draw enough targets to achieve any upside. For the Browns, it's funny because not so much funny. Nothing I guess either of these situations is funny. I think it seems like David Njoku burned parts of his face in an accident somehow. I didn't really look into too many details, but the talk yesterday was that, oh yeah, Watson was gonna play Deshaun Watson at quarterback, but Njoku would be out because of this. Just the opposite, in fact. Deshaun Watson is inactive, which again, I referenced earlier. Dorian Thompson Robinson will get the start at quarterback. David Njoku does play. There was a league I was gonna play Harrison Bryant if Njoku's out, but that's not gonna be the case. David Njoku is active. Looking at the Broncos, no fantasy relevant players on offense. Uh, Moving on to the Texans, Dario Gumbawale inactive at running back. Basically every week. The RB3 it almost switches on a weekly basis between Mike Boone and Ogunbowale. I feel this will be good for Boone, so maybe they put him as the RB3. Maybe was he dealing with an injury with, and just decided to hold him out for that last game and put Ogunbowale in. But you're gonna have a third Texans running back. It's Boone. I don't even know if I want the second Texans running back in Singletary. To be honest, I feel like I've cut him in a lot of leagues recently. So when I was drafting enough of this, I don't know if he's going to be the pass catcher. I mean, he is kind of been the pass catching back, and I think he's got 3 targets. So, not play Damian Pierce, but that's it. I think tough defense with the Steelers. I regret a league where I played Pierce instead of David Montgomery, so that's it. But yeah, I can go with Pierce now. Uh, Colts tight end Will Mallory's inactive. I don't know. I don't even know if he's drawn a target yet this year. Kylan Granson looks to be the starting tight end for the Colts, so he'd be the guy you'd go with anyway. Los Angeles Rams, Zach Evans inactive. Uh, Basically, Kyron Williams is getting every touch. Eventually, maybe they'll bring in another running back to solve that, but it seems like right now, Kyron Williams, a strong case. Where do I have him at running back? Pretty high, I think. He might be RB1, just below RB15, between Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara. Yeah, I guess that's the kind of confidence I have in Kyron Williams. I suppose he might even maybe even should be higher than Mixon, but he does seem like he's factoring in more in the passing game. Miami Dolphins, nothing really of fantasy relevance. Tyler Kroft, the tight end, is still out. Jeremy Smythe really hasn't done much anyway, so, with Waddle active in the lineup, I know they announced that a couple days ago, most targets are gonna go to Hill and Wall, I would think, or just rushing attempts on the ground. I guess we'll see against the Bills if they're able to. Maybe this is the week you take shots at any Dolphin. I know I considered Smythe in one league, but ultimately I stuck with, Juwan Johnson, especially with the news that Carr's active, if he's sticking with the starting quarterback. I could see Jameis Winston, typically not he hasn't used his tight end much. He's preferred to go to perimeter receivers. You've got Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. I can't blame him for that either. But yeah, with Carr in there, I think he'll utilize Juwan Johnson more than Winston would have. That might have been something that would ultimately with Carr active. I'll stick with Juwan Johnson. Vikings, no one of really interest. Tight end Nick Muse, who I've never heard of. I almost thought it said Nick Mullins for a second, and I realized, no, the quarterback is still the backup there. For the Saints now, Foster Moreau's inactive. A.T. Perry is also inactive. And with the news that Carr will be active, the third QB they just signed, Jake Luton, also inactive. So yeah, Moreau, A.T. Perry weren't really factoring in too much. I feel like A.T. Perry's kind of been scratch most weeks. With Moreau out, does that mean more for Juwan Johnson? I don't know. I haven't really known too much of tight end, overt amount. With the Eagles, so Rashad Penny's inactive, so that'll mean Boston Scott and Gainwell both draw in the lineup, and it looks like Penny I don't know if it's a special teams thing or they do him as the 4th guy. When all 3 of the other running backs are healthy, he's out of the lineup. Quez Watkins is also inactive. Uh, they've seemed to prefer Olamide Zaccheaus, to be honest, as that 3rd wide receiver really, not play Zaccheaus. I actually an interesting time to pick him up would have been last Monday because of the Monday night game late, and there was, you know, late on in the week, DeVonta Smith was questionable, so Zaccheaus would have been an interesting pickup for that to hold as a DeVonta Smith backup, but outside of that, I'm not really sure. Deep dynasty leagues, I've got him roster. I don't think I've got him in any draft leagues, so Pittsburgh Steelers, no major fantasy players inactive. Ray Johnson's still on IR, of course. Same with the Buccaneers tight end, Payne Durham, and it's still Cade Otton, Cole Keith. Most of the passes go to Godwin or Evans anyway, so I wouldn't really worry about starting a Buccaneers tight end unless you're super desperate. Titans mentioned earlier, Treylon Burks inactive. Nick Westbrook-Ikini, I suppose, will get more targets as the number 2 guy. For the Commanders, running back Chris Rodriguez is inactive. Brian Robinson's getting almost every touch, but that means if someone else is going to get touches, it's gonna be Antonio Gibson, so have that option. And then so I guess just past 12 noon, so one of the things I wanted to end with was some later players that are questionable. I guess Garoppolo still considered questionable, looks like Aiden O'Connell's getting the start there. Deebo Samuel, that's a player still listed as questionable for that 4:25 kickoff start, Eastern anyway. And yeah, it looks like a true game time decision. I know initially in my rankings, because Ayuk was coming off the injury having missed last week, I had Deebo ahead of Ayuk in the rankings, like right at the borderline of wide receiver 1 range. I think I had my wide receiver 13. And honestly, with Ayuk's injury, I had him down almost at wide receiver 30, or he might have honestly been in the 30s. I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it was initially 35, which is pretty ridiculous for Ayuk. And I think I was ranking it down there, not as confident in terms of is he gonna be active or not. And then he went through the week practice well, and he's suddenly the healthier one with Deebo questionable, so I kinda just flipped. I didn't drop Deebo that far, but I put Ayuk at wide receiver 13 and then Deebo at wide receiver 22 right now, just between T. Higgins and Zay Flowers. And so, but knowing that it's a 4:25 start, there also may be less replacements. Like, Deebo, I still think has the upside that if he's active, you wanna play him. Especially the league I have him in, it's a half point for first down. So, like, the guys, rushing for first downs does kinda help boost the score too. Not a point per carry league, which would be the ideal spot to have Deebo, but that I feel like was a league where advantageous to have him. I believe it's the only league I actually have him in, so the one spot where I thought it would be worth to have him. Because of that, though, in shallow benches, I really only have one option to replace him with, it's Kendrick Bourne. I don't love that against the Cowboys, but he's been drawing targets for the Patriots. I believe he leads targets, so I've gotta replace Deebo with someone, team's alpha target getter would be, I guess, a feasible and viable replacement. So Kendrick Bourne might be a guy that you can go get, and I mean, frankly, Juju might be available. I don't love it, but maybe Devontae Parker as well. Like any of those good Patriots wide receivers who draw targets can also be someone you can draw in the lineup to replace Deebo specifically at a wide receiver. Marquise Brown, another one of those 420 in that same game, actually, Cardinals 49ers. I've got Brown a little lower in the rankings, wide receiver 33. And I'm scared of this 49ers. Going back to the start spreadsheet in one of the leagues where I have Brown in, and this is a half PPR league. The 49ers have allowed the 17th most fantasy points to wide receivers, literally right in the middle of the pack. Middle of the pack as can be. So wide receiver is the one spot to exploit it, but I can also see it being just beating up on the Cardinals O-line so bad that there's no time to get the ball to the receivers. So there's a lot of leagues, especially with Marquise Brown questionable, that I'm just gonna bench him in. I think there are 3 leagues where I've got him started, and my rostership on him is like, I think 7 leagues, 6 or 7 leagues. So at least half the leagues I have him in, I've already decided to bench him. But there's a couple spots where, like, again, with those 425 limited for options, Juju Smith-Schuster's a replacement. If you can get Kendrick Bourne, that would be better, but I've got Juju. Another league, it's Allen Lazard as the replacement late. Then decided I mean, Pacheco this week, there's no injury designation. You know, Clyde scored a touchdown last week. I don't know if he's gonna do that against the Jets, so I think I'd rather just take the Jets receiver and hope that they have to throw so much to keep up in Lazard. Again, I would still ideally play Marquise Brown, but if I have to play Juju and Lazard in those tough matchups, I at least get a body in there that I think can produce. One more league where, honestly, I had to go pick up this is a league where you have to start a lot of wide receiver. You have to start a lot. deep in that sense. And I picked up Ronnie Bell. And one of the things that I've been trying to do, I've sent out some trade offers, and a couple got rejected. Oh, yeah, I've got a couple trade offers out trying to buy Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Justin Watson in 4th, or trying to buy Wan'Dale Robinson for 3rd, and the reason I've gone for those players is the late start time. The Chiefs players play it at night tonight, Wan'Dale Robinson plays on Monday night, so I can use him as replacements for Marquez Val. But currently on my roster, I had no wide receivers because, again, it's so deep. Every receiver I had, though, I had enough guys on the bench, but every receiver had a 1 o'clock start, so I actually picked up Ronnie Bell. I really don't wanna start Ronnie Bell. Now, if he goes out, maybe that's better. Maybe I end up just going with that and dropping all the other trade offers because I think Juwan Johnson was listed as doubtful. So Ronnie Bell might actually get some targets easily. So I guess I could I could play him and not worry about guys like Justin Johnson or Valdez Scantling. Um, yeah, so I think that's like Ronnie Bell, I probably I think that's as low as I think you'll go for recommending. And again, if Debo plays, it hurts that upside. He got targets last week with Ayuk out of the lineup, but games where Debo and Ayuk have both played, he hasn't gotten a single target yet, barely ever playing on the field. So there's a chance I guess well, he won't be he's been active both weeks, played 47% of the snaps week 2 actually without drawing a target. So he's at least out there on the field, maybe that he's gotten a game with targets. Now he has Purdy's trust at least. If Debo doesn't play, I think it's at least viable. But yeah, so guys like Kendrick Bourne, Juju, Allen Lazard, Ronnie Bell even, those can be viable replacements for a Debo Samuel or for a Marquise Brown. I guess last one is DK Metcalf, questionable on Monday night. So what I've done is I've tried to A, play him in a flex spot, but B, like, it's not even D like, 'cause if DK's out, you'll probably just get more targets to Jack Igba, and that's it. He's rostered in every league. You can't go pick him up. But I've been looking at the other side of the match, which Giants receivers are available. That way I can replace DK with a wide receiver. I've looked at Darius Slayton. So I've gone and picked up Darius Slayton in a couple leagues, just to have him in leagues where I've got DK Metcalf just to have somebody. I think in one league where it's a tight end premium, I actually, picked up Colby Parkinson. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Noah Fant's questionable, and so is Will Dissly. So there is a chance that Colby Parkinson ends up being the main tight end for the Seahawks. And again, if DK's out as well, that lead tight end might be the number 3 on the team in targets. So in that situation, like there was like that was in a league where Slate was available, for instance. Certainly Wan'Dale Robinson. But yeah, so dynasty leagues. Of course, Wan'Dale wouldn't have been he would have been drafted in the team that had him, would have just retained it last year. So yeah, so Colby Parkinson, if you're really stuck, again, try and play your players, your Monday night players in a flex spot. And like for DK, you put him in a flex spot and you're really stuck, Noah Fant or Colby Parkinson. And Noah Fant might be more rostered, but he's also questionable. So if he's out, Colby Parkinson, that's starting Seahawks tight end. Even the number 2, typically, like, they split so well that the number 2 almost gets as many targets as number 1 anyway, so he's probably available in most leagues. Another guy I've gone and picked up in a couple spots, so, like, me Waller. You never know, like, if he suffer an injury in practice or today or tomorrow, and so, like, I picked up Kobe Parkinson in quite a few leagues, just on the off chance I need to play him in one where likely as a replacement for he so Kobe Parkinson, there's a shot for anyone looking at a deeper DK Metcalf, um, deeper DK Metcalf, replacement. But yes, guess, no other questions. We're approaching 12:15, so I think I'll log off at 12:15. Give a good 45 minutes here. Everything goes well. I'm just checking Twitter right now to see if just on the off chance anyone's DM'd me looking for any questions there. Uh, uh, I guess that's all. Sorry. Um, yeah, no messages here. Again, I wanna thank Joel for joining the stream every morning. I guess the one thing I will do wanna announce though, next Monday or next Monday is, Canadian Thanksgiving Monday, but we also have family on it. So also with this, so I do not think I'll be streaming Sunday next week. So I guess people have to wait week 6 to see the goal line guy incorporated into the live stream. I believe Ian and Braden will still be doing their stream. Ian, he might still want to stick with 10 p.m. time. They might just go extra now. They don't have to worry about me at the end. For sure. But yeah, I won't be on next Sunday. We'll probably be on most of the season. Maybe towards the end of the year as we get towards Christmas, the end of December, early January. I might not be available for some fortunately key weeks during the fantasy playoffs, but I can always if anyone wants to DM me on Twitter at Center. I'm glad to answer any questions. You can tag me. I'm answer publicly, or you can DM me if you want to answer privately. I'm good with either. Love helping out people. I love go check out full press coverage, check out the rankings, and then check out in lieu of a live stream next week, maybe having the goal line guard article released helps people with some of those. Really looking at the I guess the purpose of that is to look at where the testing upside on a basis. What player has a higher ceiling that might go. So again, goal line guide article, rankings article, both available on fullpress.com. Uh, Always great podcasts. I co-host Fantasy Pod at underscore Fantasy Pod. My co-host Brad Harvard and I, we do an episode every week reviewing rankings and stuff like that. And now that I will start releasing the goal line guide, I'll probably start to that a lot. Usually do ranking comparison, talk about players. He and I are the first part on in our rankings, just to give people those different perspectives and explain our process behind that. I also co-host the Full Press Packers Pod at FPC underscore Packers. We do 2 episodes per week. Usually one's a recap, and then one will be a game preview. I guess last week we technically had 3 episodes because I recapped the Saints game Sunday night. We did a preview. I guess we did a preview Monday, so literally the next day for the Lions game, and then with that Thursday night game, we actually recorded a reaction episode already on Friday. So next episode will be out. I believe Monday. We're recording the preview show with Terry Biggs, Full Course Coverage Raiders. Packers Raiders. That should be an awesome episode. Check that out. Check out everything. Full Press Coverage at FP underscore coverage. All the articles, all the podcasts, everything that we release from Full Press Coverage will be tweeted up there. Shout out to Ian Glendon for setting all this up, ranking the board. I love doing this. I love talking to people. Love helping Joel out. Really hoping that CJ Stroud just crushes Derek Carr. That it makes me look at all the confidence I had in him is warranted for sure. I believe I'm 3 for 3 on like Joel's questions. I've told him to do something and it's worked. Eventually, that luck will probably run out, but I'm gonna still just always go with what I believe. Yeah, Jake Stroud will outscore Carr significantly. Maybe not significantly, but confident enough that he'll outscore him. That that I'm playing CJ Stroud. Anyway, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching another edition of Full Press Fantasy Live. Bye for now.